computer. Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in 1981 in New York State, now celebrating our 41st year. Today is Monday, August 8th, 2022 in the Gregorian calendar, and the 11th day of the 5th Israelite Hebrew month of Av in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, year 5782, our Shemitah sabbatical year, rapidly coming to a close. Welcome to episode 7 of our monthly seminar entitled Ancient Roots Mothering, Roots, Nettles, and Sage. The co-chairs of our seminar are Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin of the land of Israel, of Jerusalem, I think, Mrs. Chava Dagan of the land of Israel of the northern Negev, a real pioneer and frontier woman, and Mrs. Gilla Weiss of the free state of Florida. I no longer call it red states and blue states, I call it red states and dead states. And the differences are becoming so shocking and apparent that only a person who's brain dead couldn't see it. Having said that, and without further ado, let me hand over the mic to our co-chairs, Chava, Gilla, and Rivkah. It's all yours.
Thank you, Lowell Aryeh. Welcome, everybody. We got off to a bit of a late start today. It's a one-time thing. We apologize for those who were waiting or who missed because of the late start. Welcome to the 5 top tips for surviving food shortages. Yay! Why are we having this talk? 5 top tips for surviving food shortages. Well, let me share my screen. I have a little presentation tonight. Can everyone see that? Should be blank and white. Has anyone seen articles like this show up? Let's see, we've got fake avocados. They are meant to wean people off imported fruit. How about beef prices set to surge further as farmers sell off cattle herds? Or what do we have there? I can't even read it because our pictures are blocking it. EU country may close stores to conserve power. But wait, there's more from Breitbart. Global food crisis, restaurant czar expects winter shortages, tells public to stock up now. Or how about Rhine water levels going down, creating shortages? Or these really fun ones. Let's see, we've got a push lately. Someone commented on the bottom. Has anyone noticed the recent spike in news stories propagating cannibalism or promoting cannibalism? It should be. See, we've got cannibalism, and what's that? Oh yeah, bugs, eating bugs. Here we go. Some bugs for you over there. Drink up, says CNN. Cockroach milk is the protein drink you didn't know you've been missing. Delicious. Not kosher though. Okay, and what about this? Oh, the snack food made with cricket protein now being sold in Canadian supermarkets and all throughout the EU, where it's just become legal. And here we go, some more bugs, these mealworms, it looks like. There's been some confusion in the EU, I guess, about how to market these bugs and issues that might come up in feeding bugs and putting bugs in your products. So they've created a little helpline there to clarify things. But wait, there's more. Eat celebrity meat. How good is this? You can take a swab of a few cells from a celebrity, culture your own meat from it, and you can fill in the name of your favorite celebrity here. Or what about back to cannibalism? Okay, you can even do it for yourself. I didn't put that in here. I'm going to stop my share. I didn't put that in here, but they are already marketing kits where you can take some swabs from your own cheek and grow yourself and eat yourself. not eat yourself like I can do it all by myself. Literally eat yourself. Okay, what's going on here? Shortages, bugs, meat crisis, people getting paid to, get rid of their animals so that there's shortages in the supply chain with all of our food. It looks like we're in for some serious shortages. So because of that, we came up with our top 5 tips for handling some food shortage situations. Tip number 1, we called Meat Go Far. I'm going to say all the headlines we came up with. I love them. Meat Go Far. Okay, and this is going to cover all dead things. So we've got chickens, cows, fish, whatever, you name it. How do we make our meat go far? It seems like meat, I'm quoting another, paraphrasing here, another news headline that we've seen a few times about meat will be a special treat that comes from the World Economic Forum, something that you'll have once in a while, maybe a couple times a year. Who wants to jump in first and talk about how we make meat go far?
Well, because I'm a meat eater, and I would like to share first with everyone that we're no judgment whether someone's a vegetarian, paleo, meat eater, fish eater, you name it. And between Rivkah, Chava, and I, we all have different eating. So I think that's really important to put it out there first and to share with you all. So yes, how do we make our meat go far? So for those of you that eat meat, and in a time of shortages, we may need to have some, animal protein if we can get it. So meat go far and fish swim far. So we can preserve fish as well. And if anybody has a little pond, a little fish pond, you can put a few fish in there too. So that's always a good thing about fish. And fish, for example, salmon is really, really easy to cure. It's really easy to dry. A dehydrator becomes your best friend. If in the event you do not have a dehydrator, you can use the oven at the absolute lowest setting. And besides using it, you can also leave the door open a little. But let's throw some names out there that you're familiar with. Beef jerky. Beef jerky. Pemmican. Have you heard of pemmican? Used by Native Americans. It's a mixture of, dried meat, the fat of the meat, and berries, and supposed to be, that covers everything. You get your berries, you get your good fats, and you get your protein. Something called biltong from South Africa. I'm from South Africa. So yes, biltong was used by the Boers and Native people and pretty much everybody there as a staple. I grew up with biltong. It was what we took to school instead of a lunchbox, a little piece in our pocket, and it saw us through the day. And these are all things that you can either buy now or you can make yourself. They're all things that you can find recipes galore online. There's blogs, there's YouTube how-tos. And this way, if you can get meat now, now's the time. Ideally, you would like kosher. We keep kosher. Grass-fed, organic, whatever you can get, you get the best quality meat, you get the best quality fish, wild caught fish, and you can preserve it. It can preserve and stay good for ages and ages. And that can be an amazing supplement to whatever else you have, whatever else it is we've stocked up on. We don't have to worry because a little bit goes a long way when you're eating these type of meats. We're actually preserving some of the good enzymes and the bacteria as well. So a little bit of biltong is actually healthier for us than having a cooked steak. So this can be very nutritious, economical, and save us in a shortage. Chava.
So a couple things come to mind. One is broth. Broth is scraps. You can use, if you're doing meat, which I don't, but if you're using meat, you can use the bones, you can use, you know, whatever it is that you're throwing away, you throw it into the pot. For me, it would be vegetables, even the tops of things, the skins of things, the, you know, the pieces that aren't pretty or whatever it is, scraps go into a broth, and a broth can be so nourishing. It is just water and whatever you throw in there, you know. I like to do a vegetable broth with whatever scraps I might be cooking with that day. Carrots, pumpkin, potatoes, you know, you can think of all the very nutritious plants, greens, spinach, that kind of thing to go in there. Seaweeds, kombu, different kinds of seaweeds. And then you've got this massive nutrition in a tiny little bowl of water. For me, that would take it so far. And I will make a healing broth using turmeric and or other herbs and whatever. And I will strain it and put it in the freezer. So whenever I want to pull it out, I have this healing broth as a base for whatever else I might be cooking. That to me, even if you have nothing else to eat, you can always throw scraps or herbs that you're foraging into a pot of water and drink it. If you have nothing else, God forbid, if you have this, you have nutrition. And for me, that will feed many people. I'm in the middle right now. Some people have heard, I'm rereading Defiance. And for me, this book is like honing it in on what is survival. These people were out in the forest and they had to do so many things in order to find nutrition for 100 people, 1,000 people. And they had to keep it simple. They were in the forests of Russia, or Poland actually. And what are you going to do to keep these people alive in the middle of the Holocaust? They kept it so simple. If they ever had a meat or a fat or something, they were like, oh, thank God. But if not, they went along with the potatoes and the cabbages that they had, and it kept them alive, which is the whole point.
We should go into bone broth a little bit more. So basically, if you have the meat, so what does meat go far mean? It means you're making the meat go as far as you can. So instead of cooking up a steak, you're going to want to cook up a stew or something else and use a smaller amount of meat. You could use that one whole steak instead of feeding one person, you could feed a whole family. So you cut it into chunks and you make a meat stew. Now, if you have an animal, if you're raising your own animals, or you realize that needs to be done by necessity, you would try to use every part of the animal. So if you have chickens, then as I do now, and I'm on a steep learning curve with it, but thanks to Chava, not the learning curve, but the chickens. The feathers can be used, okay? Feathers can be used to make pillows, bedding, you know, sheets, whatever, simple stuffing of, make a fabric pocket and sew it shut. And you've got something nice and fluffy, which will come in handy, especially in the winter when it's cold. Oh, jewelry. Chava's got her chicken jewelry she's showing off. I think you can purchase this jewelry on nettlesandpins.com as well. So if you have, Chava can definitely speak about her slaughtering her goat. So that the hide of the animal can be used. It can be used for clothing. It can be used for moccasins. It can be used for some type of shoe. It can be used for gloves. It can be used for a hat. It can be used for shelter. It can be used for a blanket. It can be used for all sorts of different things. You know, there's a waterproof component to it that, you know, it's like if that source clothing or, you know, something else, that can come in really, really handy. The tendons, the sinews, you know, of the animal can be used for sewing, for in place of thread. They can be, you know, joined together for rope. You know, like some of the parts, like eyeballs and things like that, could be used for bait for other things. You know, the bones can be used for tools. They can be sculpted. They can be used for art. They can be used for broth. So the way to make a bone broth would be to take those bones, and even if you don't have your own animal and you're just going to the butcher, ask for some extra bones and simmer it for hours in water. And you can add, just like Chava said, Chava makes hers without, I also have a vegetarian house. Chava makes hers without the bones, without the meat, but she makes a vegan bone broth. And so either way, it's made the same, except for the meat. So if you have bones of some animal, you can add the bones to what Chava talked about. Now you can put everything in. You can put the peels of your onions and your garlic. You can put the stuff that you typically think goes in the garbage. Different peels, so long as the peels haven't been treated. Like the butternut squash here, for example, has got a wax coating on it. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. I don't know how I feel about that, but certainly picking, something from a neighbor's tree, I don't know, any kind of skin or potatoes, you can put in potato skins. So, if you can't get organic, just get the potatoes from the store. Clean them first with some soap and water, rinse them really well, and use the peels. And then you just let everything simmer for a few hours, or a minimum of an hour. If you have a pressure cooker, you can accomplish this in about 15 minutes at pressure. Doesn't have to take a long time. And like Chava said, you can freeze the broth, and you can replace it in any recipe that calls for water that would have a meaty or vegetable type of taste. So you wouldn't want to use it in your baking if you were trying to bake cookies or something, obviously. But if you were making some kind of pishtida, some kind of savory pie or something that called for water, you could instead use your homemade vegetable broth or bone broth or this sort of thing. Is there anything else? Feet of the animals that can go in and simmer and make a broth, all that sort of stuff. Is there anything else we should cover about meat go far before we go to what Chava or what Gilla touched on earlier, which is dehydrate everything? Point 2.
I don't know anything about this because I don't personally do it, but a lot of people talk about preserving eggs. It might be important to you and you can look into it. There's a way to do it with food grade lime and then canning it. So people can look into it if they haven't heard of that, but I don't do it, so I don't know.
I forgot all about that. And I have a tip to share right here, which is when it comes to the chicken eggs. Now I haven't done this because I'm in a thing with my chickens right now. I want them to produce eggs and they don't. So when they do, one simple way besides getting food grade lime, which to me at first when I heard about that, I was going, oh my gosh, this sounds so confusing, mixing it and whatever. So I found a way to preserve eggs, which is you take the clean eggs, which doesn't mean you wash them, but it means when it comes from your chicken, it should be clean, free of, feces or whatever. If you don't have your own chickens, you go to the grocery store, as we've been doing, and buy eggs, and those eggs are already washed. It's not ideal, it's best not to wash them, but if they have feces on them or they're not clean in some way, or they, you should wash them, and if they've already been washed, it's still fine. And you can take an oil, it can be any kind of oil that doesn't harden easily, like say coconut oil. So it could even be with mineral oil or olive oil, that sort of thing. And you rub the oil all over the egg and you set it aside. And I've read everything from extending the life of that egg from months to even up to a year. And, and if you put it in a fridge, you get at the longer end of that spectrum. If you don't, and it's sitting out, it's at the shorter end. But if you've got some chickens who are laying eggs, unlike mine, then you could preserve your eggs in that way, and it doesn't even require any refrigeration. And neither does the lime preparation, which really isn't so hard either. You mix some lime with water and you kind of put all the eggs in a big container or jug and pour this lime water. And there are recipes for that online. Another thing that Chava, thank you, reminded me of was quail. So many people have a homeowners association or something like that that precludes them raising chickens. And most people can raise quail, called slav in Hebrew, even with certain homeowner restrictions in place. In fact, many apartment dwellers raise quail in their own home. They're relatively small birds, like little mini chickens. They can be raised in a cage. They really enjoy tight, tiny, small spaces. They're not so comfortable in wide open spaces. And you can have males and females together. The males aren't crowing and, at 3 in the morning or whatever. And they lay eggs, and their eggs are teeny, teeny, tiny, but a delicacy, quail eggs. They're much sought after, and they're sold in grocery stores in the United States. I know, I don't think they are here in Israel, but that is something everybody can do, and they're super high in nutrients and protein. And a pro tip with quail eggs, if you want to crack a lot of them, you should get a cigar cutter, and you can actually put the end of the quail egg in the cigar cutter and just crack it without getting everything destroyed and broken eggs, and you can make your once over easy and whatever. But you're gonna need a bit more quail eggs than you would a chicken egg to feel full. And that's very also self-sustaining to be able to have your own male and female that can reproduce. And you can also eat the quail, and it's a kosher bird, kosher eggs. So this would be appropriate for those people who keep kosher, as well as those who don't. Let's move on to point 2, dehydrate everything. Chava, maybe you want to talk a bit about how you dehydrate everything.
Okay, so I have an oven that is an old, no longer working oven. It had to be replaced. And so what are you going to do with this huge oven? So I just stuck it over on the side of the kitchen, and it's kind of there taking up a lot of space. And I thought, well, the electricity works, just nothing else does but the fan. Maybe I can do something with it. My dehydrator was broken, so I started using it, and it works perfectly. I leave the door a little bit open so that whatever moisture goes out, and the fan is on. And if yours has some heat, you can play with it, but mine doesn't. Each oven is different and will work differently, and as you use it, you'll get to know its little synchronicities. So I dehydrate a lot of stuff in there. A lot of stuff, mushrooms, vegetables, all kinds of fruit. I just got through dehydrating banana jerky, I guess you call it, and the kids just gnaw on that all day long, but I also store it. So after it's completely dehydrated, I store it in Ziploc bags or glass jars, and I will put a little silicone moisture absorbing thing, whatever they come. I also take those from other packages that come to my house, like the seaweed always comes with it. So I'll take it and I'll stick it in a jar of things that I've dehydrated. I haven't gotten into meat. I'm leaving that to my children because I don't want to deal with it, but everything else I dehydrate. Fruits and vegetables and mushrooms and whatever I didn't mention already. And it works perfectly. And I am storing a lot of it, and we are eating a lot of it. But fruit is, full of nutrients and amazing sugars, and it just gives you energy all day long. And when you have nothing else, God forbid, it will get you through the day, and it's an amazing snack. Gilla.
Yes, so I don't dehydrate that much. That's really not my big thing, but I do dehydrate fruit, and I have, as I said before, I have dehydrated fish, salmon to be exact, and it's really easy to do. And I don't have a dehydrator right now as well. So I use the lowest setting on my oven, and I leave the door open. And if you have a modern oven like I do, they switch off automatically after 6 hours, which could be great as well, because then you really don't get it that hot. And I like to play with things. So if I think that even though it's on the lowest setting, it's a little hot, I'll switch the oven off. And then an hour later, as it's cooling a little, I'll switch it back on just to keep it at that level. If I'm doing something overnight, I do, many ovens in the US as well have this. It is called the Sabbath mode. So when we have our Shabbat or our holidays, we leave our ovens on. And most modern ovens have an automatic switch off after, I think, 6 hours. So this bypasses the automatic switch off. So if you are doing something for longer, you can use that mode. Just say you want to do something overnight. But usually I do it during the day so that I can be on top of it because, like I said, I do play a little bit with the heat. And one of my favorite things to dehydrate besides fish is mango. So I live in Florida. We have a lot of mango trees in Florida. And I'm just going to veer off slightly and say that one of my neighbor's trees is giving amazing mangoes this year, and mine is not at all. So she brings over mangoes, and they're super, super ripe, and there's nothing else to do but dehydrate them, and it's delicious. Dehydrating preserves all the nutrients. It's just taking the moisture out. But I'm veering off a little bit to the point where we do not have to have everything stocked up. We need to have good relationships with neighbors, community, friends, farmers, whoever. If somebody in your neighborhood has chickens, maybe you can dehydrate 2 trays or a tray of mango and barter, which is really what our grandparents did. And this is where we're heading with the food shortages, is where we're not going to have everything, and not everyone can dehydrate everything. And so we can barter or we can sell. I can sell a herbal tincture in exchange for someone selling me eggs, or I can give someone a herbal tincture and they can give me a tray of dehydrated pears or mushrooms. So that's my take on it. Rivkah?
I think she's gone. She went somewhere.
I'm back.
Oh, good.
I had to sign in on another device.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know if you covered, because I missed it, how long things will keep when you dehydrate them.
Chava.
So right now I've been storing maybe for a year. I think I kind of like the idea of a year. So what I do is at the end of a year, more or less, I go through everything that's already been dehydrated and sitting stored for a year, and I start replacing it instead of letting it go to the bugs, or I don't know what might happen. I don't know. So we will eat what has been stored and then dehydrate from new.
So
I
that's
haven't tested it out longer. I haven't tested it out longer than a year.
But a year
it
is
has
a
been
long
fine for
time.
me. Yeah.
Yes, amazing. Wow. Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah. Okay, should we move on to number 3? Preserving beyond dehydration. So we talked about the eggs. We already covered that a little bit, and you can do that from the even from the grocery store. You don't need to start your backyard flock. You can go to the grocery store, get some extra eggs, start, stocking up, especially if you see on the horizon that there may be an expected egg shortage. I didn't include that in my little presentation at the beginning, but right before Pesach, we had all the headlines about egg shortage right in time for Pesach. Oh no, what are we going to do? You don't need to feel powerless. You should feel empowered. You can get the eggs that are in the store right then and preserve them, so you will have them for when you need them. Would one of you like to talk about other ways of preserving, like tinctures and medicinal honeys, things like that?
Honey for me is a great one. I love honey. I think it's, besides that, ancient Egypt use it in their mummies, and it will preserve and last forever. It's so medicinal and it's sweet. And so you can get anyone to take it. So when you're talking about medicine, sometimes, it's hard to get people to eat it or want to eat it a couple times a day when it's, flu season or something. So honey, I never had that problem. It's like, come take a spoonful of honey, and they're like, okay, and they don't even care what's in it because they don't know what I was doing the year before or half a year before to get it medicinal. So you can put herbs in honey. You can put, I love to do, this is what I do before winter. During the summer, I will take garlic, ginger, onion, and turmeric. That's my syrup. I stick all of that into honey. I will chop it up, cover it with a raw honey. Make sure you get a good quality honey, and let it sit. And it becomes a syrup because it starts soaking up all the juices and the nutrients of those vegetables or herbs, whatever you want to call them. I will put thyme, sage, all the medicinals into honey, and the kids eat it up. I can use it in their tea, right? You can just, it'll melt in there and they don't even know they're getting it. They can take a spoonful of it. It works so well. I love honey. I will put anything in honey, anything, because it provides so much medicine and an overall acceptance.
So you were channeling Mary Poppins. A spoon, instead of a spoonful of sugar, you have a spoonful of honey. And I have to agree with you because same thing, my kids even, were pickier or whatever, like Chava said, they don't know what went into it before. So yes, onion honey with herbs in our house is a staple and it's just great. And I also use that honey for coating chicken when I cook chicken. And I'll also use it for salad dressings. Instead of plain honey, we use herbed and onion and garlic honey. And I would go into tinctures a little bit. That's one way of preserving our medicine, our herbs. Is to tincture. We can dry many herbs and they will keep for quite a long time. Tincturing in alcohol can actually preserve the medicine in the tincture for many years. So this is a fantastic way of preserving our foods, our medicinal foods, and our medicines. We can also use the herbs, which I'm going to let Rivkah go into a little, when we do ferments. So that's another way of preserving is fermenting. And I do a lot of fermenting. And when we ferment vegetables, we can actually add herbs into the ferments. So, it's again, using and reusing everything. But Rivkah, maybe you have a ferment that you particularly like and make.
Well, honestly, the ferments is point number 4. But before we move into point number 4, I would like to talk about vinegar. No, don't be sorry. I love it because I've got my eye on the notes. I'm going, Gilla's one step ahead of us. It's got my mind going. It's good. But let's talk about vinegar. Vinegar is great. And wine. When we talk about tinctures, this isn't something crazy. This is, what do you have in your home, in your alcohol cabinet, in your wine rack? The way tinctures used to be made was with wine. And that's all you need. Grab a bottle of wine, put your herbs, put things in there. You can put, whatever, different herbs, different citrus fruits, different citrus peels. You can put it in brandy. It's, vodka, whatever you've got, you can preserve with alcohol, but you can do it with vinegar as well. And any vinegar will do. Any vinegar. We probably all prefer apple cider vinegar for its many health benefits and probiotics and other things, but any vinegar will do. Cheapo vinegar, sure, why not? Red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, even your rice vinegars and things like that.
Vinegar, yes.
Yes. So what you should do, in my opinion, is go and look up fire cider. Fire, F-I-R-E, cider, okay? And you might want to look up the herbalist Rosemary Gladstar as well, who was at the forefront of making sure that nobody tries to appropriate the generic term fire cider, from anybody else, because fire cider was a preparation that most traditional people, and we all, as Gilla says, come from an ancient tribal traditional people. All of us have roots there. And so basically you take your vinegar, and in the case of fire cider, you put in, like Chava was saying, some immune building, bad guy busting herbs. So onions and garlic and turmeric, like Chava mentioned, and citrus peels and all sorts of things. You can even add some honey to it. You can add honey to your tinctures as well and make an elixir, which Gilla does all the time. And you can get the medicinal benefits of the honey in your tincture or in your vinegars. Fire cider is actually drunk like a little cordial in a little shot glass, or from a teaspoon or from a tablespoon. It can also be used to baste your meats, baste your chickens, or glaze your fish. It can be used on a salad as a vinaigrette. It can be part of your culinary kitchen preparation, and yet it's very strong healing medicine. And many herbalists will make up a batch of said fire cider. Look it up. There's lots of recipes, all different, and take it throughout the winter months or during cold and flu season or something like that, just to help keep germs at bay. But vinegars can be used outside of that as well. For example, speaking of eggs, you can take your eggshells, crush them up, throw them in some vinegar, and let the vinegar get to work breaking it down. If you are a woman in menopause, if you are someone who's low in calcium, if you need some more trace minerals or minerals in your diet, that vinegar is something you're going to want to use on your salads and for all of your culinary needs, to add more minerals to your diet. Again, no waste. What you would throw out, like eggshells, now comes right back into you in a form that you need, and high nutrition on waste. Should we move to ferments and sourdough? Yeah, maybe Chava wants to talk about sourdough.
Yes. Go ahead, Chava.
Okay, so I've been making sourdough. I usually for Shabbat make spelt sourdough. My sourdough is from rye flour. And it goes, when you want to start it, you either start with someone else's starter, that gives you a real quick build. But if you want to start it by yourself from scratch, so it will go through its many stages. You take flour and water and you mix them together to make a dough kind of hummus kind of texture. And then it will sit, and it needs to grab from the atmosphere all of the right bacteria. So if it starts to smell bad, you just give it another stage. That's one of its stages. But if it starts turning a weird color or really smelling rotten, then you know that it's gotten bad bacteria in there. You get rid of it, throw it out, and start again. Wash out all the containers that you might have used. What usually happens, though, is it kind of smells a little weird, and then it goes to another stage, and then it smells a little bit different, but it's not bad yet. It's just weird, like a little off, but not bad. And then it goes through many stages. Finally, after, I don't know, a few weeks, depending on the weather, depending on the environment, if it's open windows, when you are, bringing in the good bacteria, or if it's a closed environment with air conditioning, as everything's volatile and it might change, and depending on many circumstances, how long this will take. But it should be within a month, maybe. And you will finally come to a sour smelling, bubbly, fluffy, beautiful sourdough. And then once you have that, and many people go through, they take out a cup and then they add a cup. You can read about it online. Everyone's got their thing. I put flour and water in a container and I leave it alone. I don't have time to take it out and put it in and measure it again. That's me. So everyone, you can find a recipe, but that's all it is essentially, is flour and water. So then once you have that and it's perfect and bubbly, if you care for that, it will last a lifetime. it will, and I give to anyone and everyone who wants to, they only need to start with a half a cup, and then they can start their own, and they don't have to go through all the stages. They can have right away within a couple of hours, depending again on the weather and all that stuff, sourdough that's ready to use. And then once you want to make bread or crackers or whatever it might be, you take about a cup of that sourdough and dump it into a new bowl of flour, whatever flours you happen to use, it doesn't matter, and use your regular bread recipe just without the yeast. And then give it, again, depending on the weather and everything else, within a couple of hours, you should have a loaf of bread that has risen. If you don't want to wait, as you make crackers, and it's just in there. But it helps break down whatever gluten or different things that might be a little difficult for some people to normally accept the bread. Sourdough has been really helpful in that kind of thing, in that situation. I use my sourdough, I have a huge container, and I leave it in there, the same batter, until it's all gone, until the container is empty. I do not wash it, because now it has all that amazing bacteria on the sides of the bucket or jar or whatever it is. So you don't want to wash it all the time, all of this antibacterial soap and all of this. I don't conform to that, but it has made my sourdough like unbelievable. It works so well, and even if there were some bad strain of bacteria, it gets rid of it and stays its amazing self. So I refill the bucket when it's empty, only when it's empty, and I stick it in the fridge to store it until I use it again. That's my sourdough.
So Chava, when you're using your starter that you've created, and I just want to kind of add in here, flour can mean anything. It can actually mean oatmeal. Okay, any grain. You can take some leftover oatmeal and make a starter with that. But when you're taking, you say you make your bread, you replace a cup of flour or something with your cup of sourdough. And then what's happening? How are you refilling the sourdough starter? Or do you just keep adding to it? About how often? Or that's what you
wait, I keep using it. I use the container until it's all gone, but I don't wash. Then I will add in new flour and new water. I mix it up, and from what was ever left in the bucket, it is now brand new sourdough, and I will store it in the fridge. I don't keep adding and nothing until it's done, till it's finished. It's my easier way.
And you keep it in the fridge.
Okay. Also, you mentioned depending on the weather, and I want to draw attention to that, because in the cold months, that starter is going to take a long time to kick up. But in the warm months, that it could happen within a couple days, 3 days. It can happen really, really fast. And one solution to that would be to just keep it near your oven that you're using. So the burners on the top, electric, gas, it doesn't matter. It's the heat source and just keeping it near something hot, and you'll see it start to bubble up when it gets to be ready. Gilla, do you want to talk about some ferments?
Yeah, so one of my favorites, and I think it's relatively easy to get into, and it's the same concept. It's the one like sourdough, it continues to grow and to give, and that is kefir. Kefir or kefir, depending how you pronounce it. And you use the grains, which have nothing to do with grains. They are totally grain-free. It's the bacteria. I would compare it to, for kombucha, you would use a SCOBY. So for kefir, they're called kefir grains, And for many, many years, I used the water grains, so non-dairy, although there is dairy. And one of the things that I absolutely love about kefir is that the research shows that 1 tablespoon of kefir gives you, and I don't remember the number, but in the trillions of viable, live, good probiotic bacteria, which is more than any capsule, and you don't even know what's live in the capsule. And it's in a food base, so your body actually knows what to do with it, how to assimilate it and how to absorb it. And it's phenomenal. So it's really easy because you take the grains. So for the water grains, I think it's a 1/4 cup of the grains. I use the quart mason jars, and you'll pour filtered water over that and sugar, usually a tablespoon, no more. You can use a little less sugar and add a few raisins or a date or two. You cover it with cheesecloth, put it in your cabinet in a dark place. 24 hours later, sometimes I forget, it might be a little more than 24 hours, you have your first ferment. Many people use that. It's like a slightly sour, slightly sweet kind of a drink. Not fully fizzy, just a little bit of a tang. You can use that in smoothies. You can add it to any juice, anything that you drink. You can add it to baking when it calls for water. And I actually use water kefir when I do, on the rare occasion, make sourdough gluten-free. I'm gluten-free. Sourdough has been a major challenge for gluten-free. I find oats works a little better, and actually a combination of the flours, so maybe oats with some of the other gluten-free flours together. But I usually do a second ferment with the water kefir, and that is I take that fermented water and add usually half. So if it's a whole mason jar, I'll add about a mason jar of grape juice, or half, and pour that into 2 jars, put a proper mason jar seal on, and put that back in the cabinet. 24 hours later, 36, 48, you have a fizzy, sweet, tangy, delicious drink. My kids, when they were little, used to call it grape soda. And we drink it in shot cups because it is so bubbly and so full of the good stuff. We don't want to overdo it. But it's delicious, and you're feeding your family something that they're going to love. They're not going to be, oh my goodness, what she got for us this time. They're going to ask for it. And it is so easy to make. So that's really my specialty. I ferment pretty much everything and anything I have. I would add that when I plan a ferment, I would either use something that is grown in my garden so that it has all the good microbes on it, or I would get as fresh as possible from a farmer's market or a store where at least it looks very fresh. But when I have something like carrots that have been in the fridge for a while and they don't look so great, I don't throw them away. I ferment them anyway. So again, personally, I ferment anything and everything. And I'm sure, Rivkah, you have something that is your staple.
Well, I have a question for you first. You talked about filtered water, but Gilla, what if you don't have filtered water? What if you don't have access to that stuff?
Okay, so there's a few different things that you can do. I mean, I'm sure you have ideas too, but if I don't have filtered water, first of all, you can filter water. You can make your own filters. You can use charcoal. You can use many things. What we want to do with the water is that we get from our cities and counties, and this is the world over. We want to get rid of the chlorine because that will not allow the bacteria to proliferate. It's going to inhibit the growth of the bacteria. So there are things that we can do, and one of the things is adding literally a few grains of ascorbic acid, pure ascorbic acid, and letting it sit. I would say a very few grains in a huge gallon of water. Another thing that can be helpful is baking soda, good old baking soda. Same thing, a little pinch in a huge gallon of water. There are other things, and other ways of filtering water. If you have, like I have, a canal in my backyard, a nice Florida swampy canal, not my favorite, but something that I can use, and I know in a pinch. And again, I would use a coffee filter, I would use charcoal, I would use sand, and pour the water through that. And then I can add a drop of iodine. I can, do things like that, and the water is good to drink, even swampy, yucky water.
Okay, so you can learn more about that by looking online at how to make a water filter with charcoal and sand and this sort of thing. And for those who don't know what ascorbic acid is, it sounds really complicated, but it is the most readily available form of vitamin C in Israel. It might be in the United States too, I don't know. But if you go into a pharmacy to get some vitamin C, it's usually sold as ascorbate, which is the actual vitamin C, acid, which is what it's bonded to. Okay. Yeah, well, I snuck out. I turned off my camera so I could sneak out and show you this. Gilla talked about fancy mason jars and stuff. I don't do any of that stuff. That's not true. I also have mason jars, but this is just an old, I don't know what it was, pickle jar, something jar with a lid. And I washed it out when I'm done with it, and I reuse it, and it already comes with a lid that fits. I don't take any trouble about, you know, boiling things and seals. That's all too complicated for yours truly. But what is in here, I wish you could smell it and see it. This will have to suffice. I don't know if you can. I'm on my phone right now too. Can you see that? Those are preserved lemons. And I have a lemon tree. And thank God I made a compost under it, and we get tons of lemons from it, and it's almost always lemon season, except right now I don't have any ripe lemons on it to use. And I was making a recipe today that called for lemons, and I'm really totally out. But luckily, when the season was, and many lemons didn't even make it into some sort of preservation. There were so many, they were given to neighbors. They were on the ground, rotting on the ground. They were, you know, we made a few jars of this preserved lemon. This recipe, I will give it to you right now. I saw someone asking in the comments about recipes. So you're going to need 2 ingredients, lemons and salt. And that's how you preserve in salt. The end. I'll start with something really easy, sauerkraut or kimchi. You just take a cabbage and you chop it up or shred it, and you put it into stuff it into a jar or, you know, some type of container that you'll be able to put a lid on. And you just sprinkle a layer, and then you grab a handful of salt and you sprinkle some salt, or you shake some salt on it. And then you grab another layer of cabbage and you put it on top, and then you sprinkle some salt on, grab another layer, sprinkle some salt, all the way up until you're at the top, put the lid on. I know there's no water in it right now, but just hang tight, because probably within 24 hours on a hot day, you're going to start, even within a few hours on a hot day, you're going to start seeing that salt pull all the natural waters out of the cabbage, and it will make its own brine. And as it goes, you'll want to push it down and add more if you can, or move it into a smaller jar, or weight it down so that all of the cabbage is under the brine, under the water, and you let it sit. Start tasting it after about 5 or 6 days and see what you think. You might like it to ferment for weeks, a month, if it's cold weather, or more, or, you know, less than a week. It's your call. But once it gets to the taste that you like, you take it and you put it in the fridge. So we'll move over to the lemons. Same thing. Okay, I took the lemons, I thinly sliced the lemons, but there's other ways to do it. And I have organic lemons from my own trees, so I don't even have to worry about washing them. I don't have to worry about anything. Everything's great. But if you were getting store-bought lemons, you could wash them off and thinly slice them. We found that's the best way. You're going to be eating the rind here and everything all together. I don't even really go crazy about removing the pits inside. And you do the same way with the sauerkraut. You put a layer of lemons, a sprinkling of salt, layer of lemons, or, you know, a tablespoon in between layers, depending on your jar. You might need a couple, you might need less, and you layer it up. And the salt will draw the juice from the lemons. You want to try and save as much juice when you're slicing, so you can just put it in there. And then you can add other things like, excuse me, in this one, we've got cinnamon sticks, we've got black pepper. I believe there's a bay leaf in here. Some interesting spices, and we let it sit We let it sit outside on a counter. Again, we don't want it to be cold until it's ready. We want it to be room temperature, whatever that is in whatever weather. And we go in and we taste it. When the rind is nice and soft and mushy and chewable, that's when it's done. You might like your rind with a little bit of a bite still. That's okay, whatever you prefer. And then once it's ready to your liking, you put it into the fridge. This is a condiment that's used in Moroccan and other African and Northern African cuisine. It's really super fancy stuff. And I have jars and jars full of it. And today when I made my kids fish patties, I didn't have any lemons. So I grabbed some of this lemon, omitted the salt from the recipe, chopped up my lemon rind and juice and everything, and just put a couple tablespoons in for this recipe. And I was good to go. I got a wonderful salty, lemony flavor that was light and delicate, and it was amazing. Does it taste salty? It does taste salty when you eat it plain, but it's no biggie when you combine it on other things. I went to a fancy bistro type restaurant, and they made a sandwich with arugula and cheeses and whatever, and they had this preserved lemon, you know, garnishing the bread, spread out on the bread, and it did not make the sandwich taste salty in any way. You just need something to offset it. This is a really healthy and wonderful accompaniment to T-Vol and other of that, you know, other junky things that you might use in a pinch when you know, have nothing else because of time or whatever. It's your off day in cooking. So you can snazz it up a bit with some healthy things. You've got healthy probiotics. You're preserving your lemons. And I now have lemon all year round. Like this. You can do these types of ferments with other things as well. The sky's the limit. And you can also preserve in sugar. Number 5 and the final, there's no lemon today, bummer. Well, good thing you're here. Okay, number 5, our final tip before we close and open up to Q&A is replace ingredients. So we started talking about that. Chava started talking about that at the beginning of the show with making a vegan bone broth without using any animal products. How else would we replace, say, eggs? If we don't have any eggs, how would we replace that in a recipe?
I use fruit, applesauce that I would make myself, or mashed banana, or mashed baked sweet potato. All of those create an airy, fluffy feeling that you then don't need the eggs. I use it in muffins, pancakes, waffles, crepes, you know, anything that I might normally use eggs in. I don't need them because now I have either a starchy sweet potato or a fluffy applesauce or a mashed banana.
Now, if you're trying to replace eggs in your quiche that calls for 14 eggs that my sister makes, this isn't going to work. You can't use a mashed banana and replace for your quiche, right? So we need to employ common sense when we're replacing certain things. But yeah, but that fruit is a great way in a like a cake, some type of cake. You could replace the egg with banana or apples, and making applesauce doesn't have to be so complicated either. I used to think it meant hours of cooking on a stove, but sometimes all you need is a really good blender, and you just put the apples, peel and all, into the blender and grind it up, and you're good to go. Or perhaps a food processor would get that for you as well, or maybe a little bit of water added, maybe not, depending on your apples. Gilla, how would you replace something in a recipe? Give an example.
So for example, just the eggs, again, when we're talking 1 or 2 eggs and no more, a mashed banana is really great. And I also, one of my kids used to be allergic to eggs, and my grandchildren. So ground flaxseed, if you put that in water a little, it's going to gel. And so I actually used herbs like slippery elm bark, powdered slippery elm bark. It does pretty much the same thing. It's mucilaginous, and you can mix it with the flaxseed powder, and that you can grind yourself. And you don't need a lot. And slippery elm bark has a little bit of, it's not sweet, but it's reminiscent of maple. So when you're baking something, you're not going to be adding a lot of it, but maybe a teaspoon of the gelled or a tablespoon. And so that actually is really good for your gut, your whole, digestive system. And it's reminiscent of the maple flavor. So if you add a little bit of sweetener to that, voila, it works well. I'm gluten-free, as are some of the members in my family. So we substitute, gluten-free flours. And when I bake any recipe, and every recipe to me is a blueprint and something that is just there so that I can substitute, because I do not know how to follow a recipe to the T and have always substituted. So when something calls for cornstarch, I never use cornstarch. I will use tapioca starch or arrowroot. And if you're out of that, you can use good old potato starch. If a recipe calls for honey, you can use honey. You can use agave. You can use maple syrup. And you can use silan, which is very popular in Israel. And in the US, you can get it in kosher stores. And as of now, it's even at Costco. So you can get silan, which is date syrup. You can even get coconut syrup. So the list is endless. And these are all good and healthy. And they're fantastic substitutes. So there's so many different things that we can substitute for. Again, flours, I use gluten-free. And if anybody is gluten-free and you want to convert a recipe, I suggest you use a combination of the gluten-free flours and not just one. Again, sugar, I would never add the amount of sugar, and I often substitute and add cinnamon so that it doesn't need to be as sweet. But again, if there are shortages and we do not have flour, we can use, like Chava said, we can use sweet potato, we can use potatoes, we can even use squash, and all of these things are amazing starches, starchy vegetables that can be used in baking for everything from muffins to pancakes. Rivkah, what do you use? What do you substitute?
Well, firstly, I want to mention something about the flax seeds, is that flax seeds keep for a long time in storage. So not only can they replace eggs, but, no one's going to be surprised when there's an egg shortage and, oh no, I can't make my favorite cake for my son's birthday or whatever. You've got your flax seeds. They've been in there for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. It's okay. It's fine.
As long as they're whole. As long as they're whole and not ground.
That's right. They should be ground immediately prior to using. Also, for the best nutritional value, that's a good rule of thumb for anything, any whole food. Replacing salt with seaweed. The name is slipping me. It's like goes something. It's what the Japanese did to replace salt. They would use some salt and some ground sesame seeds, and together, I forget the name. Beth knows, but she's not on the call tonight. No, they not the seaweed. It was primarily like a sesame seed, half sesame seeds, ground or slightly cracked, with salt. And it goes something, someone knows, and someone who's watching this should write in. You can replace with seaweed. So you can take seaweed and grind it up or break it up or whirl it into your blender and use that instead of salt. There's a lot of salty edible plants in Israel, and you can use that to impart a salty flavor to your foods as well. And lastly, I want to mention meat, which kind of brings us full circle to the beginning of the show. What if you don't have meat? What if you are a meat eater and you're used to eating meat and that's how you feed yourself or your family or both, and now there's no meat? It's become unattainable. or way too expensive to eat. Well, what I've learned is that a lot of people run to the fake meat products that are highly processed and sold in the store, and they use that to replace meat. But those products are not so healthy, even if it says on them that they're made with soy or peas or whatever it is, they've got a lot of chemicals in them. So replacing meat, what you're replacing is both, there's a flavor, and that can be accomplished with certain herbs that you would use in your meat. Like there's different herbs that make that flavor we associate with bacon or turkey bacon or something like that, or jerky. And so having that herbal blend, which of course, if kept in a cool, dry place, can last for many, many years, and using that can work. But also you're replacing the proteins, the nutritional value of meat. And so you would look to nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, different beans, things like that, to replace the protein content that you may be accustomed to from having meat. And there are some wonderful vegetarian meat recipes like meatloaf and things like that that can be found online using things like lentils and perhaps even cheese. I make a dairy meatloaf that has no meat in it whatsoever. It's totally dairy. If that is good for everybody, we will open it up to Q&A. And Lowell, if we can turn off the recording for the Q&A.
Yes,
would-
of course. Just a second.